Masugo and Yui have decided to date in secret, keeping their relationship hidden from their co-workers. Coincidentally, the topic of office romance comes up in Masugo's department. When asked for his opinion, he says he doesn't think it's something people should be doing. His co-workers argue that sneaking around makes it even more exciting, that for a couple in love, secrecy isn't a deterrent, but fuel, like a play. Masugo insists that makes it an even bigger no for him, though he's obviously lying through his teeth. Right then, his girlfriend arrives. She's from another department and has come to complain about something. She acts so aggressively toward him that his co-workers tell him he should try to get along with her better. Back at home, Yui apologizes with a bright smile for being so mean to him at work, explaining that it was all an act. Masugo admits he thought she was about to break up with him. She reassures him, saying that since they only recently started dating, she's unsure how to behave around him at work. Among their colleagues, they have a reputation for constantly bickering like cats and dogs, but in reality, they had feelings for each other all along, and after a lot of secret back and forth, they finally became a couple. For now, they've decided to keep their relationship under wraps. Even so, Masugo wants them to at least talk normally at work without fighting. However, Yui refuses, saying that if she doesn't hold back, everyone will figure it out, because she can't hide her feelings. As for why they're keeping it a secret, it's to avoid workplace complications, potential personnel changes, and unwanted rumors. Masugo also doesn't want Yui to become the subject of vulgar fantasies. After that, the busy season begins, and every department is swamped with work. Masugo and Yui try their best to find time to meet, but it's difficult, especially since Yui is now banned from Masugo's department due to her habit of being rude whenever she visits. As a result, they go an entire week without seeing each other. Their first encounter in days happens in the elevator. A co-worker, noticing their usual tension, tries to get them to get along. Yui, instead of being outright rude, starts acting like a tsundere. The co-worker even picks up on this and teases her, saying she's just being shy because Masugo complimented her. Meanwhile, Masugo worries that she's being way too obvious. People are bound to notice. And sure enough, the co-worker does sense that they actually get along better than they let on. Once she leaves and the elevator gets more crowded, Masugo and Yui discreetly hold hands and lean into each other, calling it their way of recharging after all the stress from work. When the busy season finally ends, they decide to go see a movie together. While planning their date, they also agree to start calling each other by their first names when they're alone. After all, they've been dating for almost a month now. However, when Masugo calls her Yui for the first time, she gets extremely embarrassed, even though it was her idea. She's so flustered that she can't bring herself to call him by his first name in return. Masugo understands, though, since they've spent the past 6 years addressing each other by their last names at work. At the theater, the movie turns out to be a bit scary, and Yui instinctively grabs Masugo's hand. This makes him wonder why that doesn't embarrass her when simply hearing her name does. When they leave the cinema, they run into an old work acquaintance, Seiya, one of the instructors who helped them when they were new, and also Yui's senior from university. Seiya invites them out for a meal to celebrate their unexpected reunion. During dinner, Masugo starts reminiscing about how their co-workers used to speculate that there was something special between Yui and Seiya, even wondering if they were dating. The conversation flows normally, but Masugo finds himself getting more and more annoyed by Seiya. At some point, he starts thinking that it wouldn't really matter if Seiya found out about their relationship, since he works at a different branch. Just as he's about to say that Yui is special to him, he notices her gripping his shirt, trembling slightly, clearly nervous about Seiya discovering their secret. But it seems their efforts were in vain. As Seiya bids them farewell, he apologizes for interrupting and gives them a knowing wink. He probably figured it out. On the way home, Yui thanks Masugo, finally calling him by his first name. He smirks, saying it took her long enough, especially since she had no problem calling Seiya by his first name. Panicked, she hurriedly explains that it was only because 4 people at her university had the same last name. Masugo chuckles, saying he was just teasing, then leans in for a kiss, but Yui covers his mouth with her hand, still flustered from nearly getting caught earlier. Amused, he suggests they continue at his place instead, and continue they do. That night, they seal the deal. The next morning, Yui is utterly embarrassed. She called his name so many times last night that it keeps replaying in her head. Since she stayed at his place overnight, Yui ends up wearing the same clothes the next day. But it's not a problem. She has a change of clothes in her locker, so as long as no one from her department sees her, she should be fine. To be extra cautious, they decide to take different trains at the station. It turns out to be the right call, as Masugu runs into a co-worker on his train. She recently moved near that station. In the end, everything goes smoothly, and Yui manages to change before anyone notices. One day, they head to work separately as usual, but by chance they run into each other. They take it as a stroke of luck and are secretly happy, though they still pretend to dislike each other as always. Now, as of late, Yui has been busy with a long-term project in her department, so their interactions are brief. We see them meeting up a few times, going out for drinks at night or having dinner at Masugu's place. One evening after dinner, Yui gives him a shoulder massage. She's being especially considerate because she saw him doing some heavy lifting earlier that day and has been resisting the urge to touch him ever since. But she quickly adds that once she's done, it'll be his turn to return the favor. Several days later, one of Masugu's co-workers invites him and another girl out for drinks. He accepts since Yui had already told him she'd be going out with her co-workers as well. And what do you know? They all end up at the same place and decide to drink together. For some reason, Yui goes wild, drinking like there's no tomorrow. We learn that Yui has been trying to talk to a new transfer named Some, who recently joined her department. Since he's really shy, she wants to help him integrate, which is the only reason he agreed to come out that night. Now, as I mentioned, Yui has been drinking a lot, so when Masugu sees her get up and start walking unsteadily, he gets worried and follows her toward the bathroom. Sure enough, she's feeling awful but doesn't want to make a scene. Maybe it's the alcohol, but she suddenly gets really lovey-dovey with Masugu until she eventually falls asleep on his shoulder. And then it happens. Some steps out of one of the bathrooms. He had been there the whole time, trying to wait until they left so he wouldn't embarrass them. But they took too long. Bottom line, he's just found out their secret. The next day, Yui learns about the whole thing and immediately starts plotting ways to take Some down. Masugu has to calm her down, assuring her that Some doesn't seem like the type to spread rumors. Even so, Yui worries he might accidentally let it slip. Masugu reassures her once more before going to talk to Some himself. Masugu asks him to keep their relationship a secret. Some, confused, asks why they're even hiding it in the first place. It's not like office relationships are forbidden. Masugu explains that they want to keep their personal lives separate from their work selves. Some takes that to mean that since there's no guarantee they'll get married, a breakup could make things awkward if everyone knew. In the end, he promises to keep quiet because he owes a lot to Yui. After their conversation, one word keeps echoing in Masugu's mind: marriage. He starts picturing that happy day, realizing just how much he wants to keep walking beside Yui, day after day, for the rest of his life. A little later, Yui is in a meeting with her team discussing the design for their new product on social media. The higher-ups are pushing for something classic, but Yui disagrees, arguing that if they don't take risks and try new things, they'll fall behind their competitors. Her co-workers point out that many people favor a classic approach, including Some, who believes a simpler design might be better. Although Yui can't stop thinking about the fact that Some knows about her relationship, she remains professional and assures the team that she'll take everyone's opinions into consideration. That night, Yui meets with Masugu again, this time at her apartment. He arrives a bit late because he stopped to pick up the donuts she wanted to try. Upon entering, he's surprised by how many rabbit plushes she has. There are even more than the last time he visited. Her room is overflowing with the things she loves, creating an atmosphere that feels completely different from his own minimalist space. So he can't quite feel at ease there. Yui then brings out some coffee to pair with the donuts, and they start eating. She's delighted with the treat, her adorable expressions captivating Masugu, who never gets tired of watching her reactions. He asks if she's always loved sweets this much. She admits she has, but her passion for them grew even more after joining the company. She began exploring new treats, trying out recommendations from others, and discovering so many delicious options that she couldn't stop wanting to try more. Lately, she's been relying on social media for recommendations, but one of his co-workers knows far more about sweets than she does. She admits she's still in the process of falling deeper and deeper in love with them. Then she asks if he likes donuts. He replies that he doesn't particularly care for them, he just bought them for her. Yui often shares the things she enjoys and what makes her happy, and the more Masugu learns about her, the more curious he becomes about her interests. Gradually, he finds himself noticing things he never paid attention to before. Ultimately, he tells her he likes donuts as much as she does. Hearing that, she lights up with joy and kisses him passionately. She tells him his expression just now was so cute, it made her realize how much she loves him. In his mind, Masugu reflects that the more he gets to know her, the more he likes her, and he can't help but want to learn even more. Then they begin chatting about their day, and Yui mentions that she still feels a bit nervous talking to Some. Masugu reassures her, saying that Some is a good guy and has promised not to reveal anything, so she shouldn't worry. But Yui can't help it, especially after noticing Masugu blushing while talking about Some. Of course, he doesn't realize that Masugu was just recalling the time Some brought up marriage. Yui wonders how much Some actually knows about their relationship, and it makes her even more anxious since he keeps everything to himself. Later, her co-workers start discussing product packaging, particularly the design of the donuts Masugu had bought. Yui begins to share how a friend brought some donuts to her place but suddenly freezes, realizing that Some might guess it was actually Masugu. Quickly, she tries to cover it up by emphasizing that her friend is a girl. Some notices her awkward attempt to deflect, but he genuinely doesn't care. Observing her clumsiness, he thinks to himself that Yui is even more scatterbrained than he initially thought. Feeling exasperated, he wonders why she keeps hovering around him when he's already promised to keep their secret. To make matters worse for both of them, their other co-workers leave the room, forcing Yui and Some to work alone on some documents. Yui tries to make small talk, but since Some is an introvert, he responds with short answers. Then, out of the blue, he asks if she doesn't trust him at all. Caught off guard, Yui doesn't respond right away, taking a moment to compose herself. When she finally speaks, she assures him that she wasn't doubting him. It's just that this is the first time she's been in a situation like this, and it's left her feeling a bit shaken. She apologizes for being such a pathetic senior. Some responds by saying, "Maybe this is what Masugu was talking about." Yui immediately panics, asking what Masugu said and what they talked about. Some calmly replies that he's saying this for her benefit. If she's that obvious, everyone's going to figure it out, and it won't be his fault. Yui has no choice but to agree. That same day, Masugu is sent to the accounting department's archives building to retrieve something. As he's leaving, he hears a loud crash in a nearby room. When he checks, he finds Yui surrounded by a pile of falling items. Apparently, the planning department's archives are a complete mess, and she explains that a notice was sent out requiring the room to be urgently cleaned. Yui insists that he doesn't need to help her, but Masugu refuses to leave her alone, so they start tidying up together. As they work, Yui begins to get carried away, chatting excitedly with Masugu. However, she quickly catches herself and switches back to work mode, reminding herself of the rule to act like rivals at work, even though no one is around to see them. At one point, Yui asks him to hold the step ladder while she climbs up. As he does, Masugu realizes he can see under her skirt. He's relieved it was him who found her, thinking about how defenseless she is in moments like this. He tells her he'll handle it since she's wearing a skirt today. Embarrassed, she nearly loses her balance, but he catches her safely. They end up close and it seems like they're about to kiss, but of course that's when her co-workers arrive unexpectedly. Their meeting ended early, so they decided to help with the cleanup. However, they don't find anyone because Masugu and Yui have hidden in the back. The co-workers begin looking for Yui, knowing she should be there. Masugu is desperate, silently wishing her co-workers would hurry up and leave, as there's no way to explain the compromising position they're in. He's also worried they might accidentally knock something over. He wonders if this situation is the consequence of getting too cocky at work. At that moment, for some reason, Yui tells him it's fine to move a bit closer, and he does. Meanwhile, her co-workers wonder whether Yui has already finished cleaning since everything seems tidied up. However, they notice the door was still unlocked. In the end, they conclude she must have left already and decide to head back to their department. Once they're alone again, Yui and Masugu reflect on the situation and agree that they need to stick to the rules, even when no one else is around. Several days later, one of Masugu's co-workers mentions she got tickets for 3 consecutive nights of baseball games. She says she has 7 tickets and invites people from Yui's department to join. Naturally, Masugu and Yui end up sitting together. Masugu feels thrilled, thinking that going to a baseball game with his girlfriend is the best. It's the kind of date he's always dreamed of. However, he quickly reminds himself of the rules they agreed to follow and the fact that they're not alone. Even so, they can't help but talk during the game. Yui starts asking questions about the rules, and they celebrate the runs together. Later, when they go to get food for everyone, Yui confesses that she doesn't know much about baseball. However, she admits she was aware that he likes it. Still, today's the first time she's realized just how much he loves it. As they walk back to their seats, they hold hands. Yui asks if he's a bit drunk, and Masugo replies that she probably is too. Still, he says it's fine, it's just for that day. When they arrive, a great home run is scored, and in his excitement, he hugs her to celebrate. Just then, one of their co-workers, who's also drunk, hugs them from behind, cheerfully welcoming them back. Once they're back in their seats, Yui leans in and whispers into Masugo's ear that they should come alone next time. A while later, Yui and her friends are at a convenience store. The first sweets Yui developed are now on sale, and she's secretly watching to see if anyone buys them. However, at least for now, no one has. The focus then shifts to Some and Hayakawa, Masugo's co-worker who always invites everyone out. Both had planned to enjoy some time alone at a cafe and arrived separately. But when she called out to him, the waitress assumed they were together and seated them at the same table. Since neither of them wanted company, they now find themselves in an uncomfortable situation. Then we shift to Yui, who is searching for mentions of her product on social media, but once again finds nothing. Later, she meets with Masugo, who immediately asks if something is wrong, since she sounded down when they talked on the phone. However, she puts on a cheerful front. Meanwhile, Hayakawa apologizes to Some for making things awkward and tells him that once he's done eating, he's free to leave first. Despite normally avoiding small talk because it drains her, she makes an effort to start a conversation. However, Some simply tells her that her food is going to get cold. Annoyed, she points out that she was just trying to be kind. He reassures her that she doesn't need to force a conversation just because they're sharing a table. He prefers being alone at a cafe, and so does she. Hearing that, she decides she'll just get to work, which is the reason she came in the first place. After some time, she realizes he was right. Just sitting there with him is fine too. Eventually, he finishes his meal and says he'll be leaving first. Before going, he adds that even if it was just for a short while, he's glad she tried talking to him. Until now, he had only seen her as a terrible drunk. She asks if she was really that bad, and when he leaves, she smiles. Back at the office, Yu is checking for reviews of her product, and for the third time, she finds nothing. She also looks at the company's sales data and confirms that her product isn't selling well. Still, she's absolutely confident in its taste. She's sure things are just getting started. Then she overhears a conversation about another new product that's performing really well. She copes by thinking that it belongs to an established product line with a bigger advertising budget, while she's starting from scratch. The poor girl becomes so overwhelmed by her perceived failure that she snaps at a co-worker who keeps pushing chocolates on her despite her having already declined. The outbursts shocks everyone, including herself. Even when she arrives at Masugo's apartment, she's still in a bad mood. It turns out she's frustrated because the section manager, who rarely assigns tasks, suddenly dumped a large amount of data entry work on her, right when she's desperately trying to come up with a promotional plan for her first product. But all anyone does is keep praising the existing product. Even her friends have already moved on, getting excited about other sweets. She insists that no one understands how good her product actually is. She knows it would sell well, she worked so hard on it. So why isn't it selling? She really doesn't want to say something that pathetic, but at this point, she's completely drained, frustrated, and confused. Masugo tells her that's just how things are. His department doesn't create products, but since accounting interacts with all departments, he knows that everyone feels the same way at some point. It's common for something you've poured your heart into to go unrecognized. Even so, he understands how hard she's trying. The people in her department surely wouldn't think her feelings are pathetic, so she should be more honest and express herself. The next day, she witnesses the first customers buying her product at the store, and she even tears up a little. She's really happy. Sometime later, during lunch, she overhears a group of girls talking about her boyfriend and how he has taught them many things about their work. At first, she's surprised, but she quickly composes herself to avoid giving anything away. It's a little embarrassing, but hearing people talk about him like that feels kinda nice. However, the conversation soon shifts to his looks, with the girls wishing he would transfer to their department. They even start wondering if he has a girlfriend, and in her mind, she immediately answers that he does. She's right there. Yui starts wondering if Masugu is actually popular with the ladies. Even her friends sitting with her begin commenting on what the girls were saying. One of them admits that she kind of gets where they're coming from and points out that Yui seems to get along pretty well with Masugu. Flustered, Yui quickly denies it. Then she finds herself thinking that all those gossiping girls are really cute, while she, on the other hand, is in terrible shape right now from all the work she's been doing. Lately, she's been feeling a little too comfortable around Masugu. She's been slacking off as a girlfriend and not paying much attention to her appearance. Thinking she needs to do something about it, she decides to take action. The next day, she shows up at his apartment looking unusually bright and put together. Masugu immediately notices something is off and asks why she's so quiet. Without hesitation, she tells him she's wearing special lingerie that day and asks if he wants to see. He admits that he does, but says he won't, because with the worried look on her face, he can't just make a move. If there's something on her mind, she should just say it. She finally confesses what's been bothering her, but he reassures her that he's definitely not popular with girls. She immediately disagrees, insisting that by her standards, he absolutely is. That's exactly why she needs to step up her game as his girlfriend. He says he appreciates the thought, but in the back of his mind, he can't help but think that he deals with the same thing all the time. After all, plenty of her male co-workers seem to like her too. He tells her that she doesn't need to force herself to be sexy or anything like that. He only has eyes for her, and honestly, he likes seeing her at ease more than anything. But his words rub her the wrong way, and without hesitation, she starts undressing, revealing the delicate baby doll she's wearing underneath. Before he can react, she kisses him passionately. She insists she's not forcing anything. She's going to make him eat his words. He should just leave everything to her. She won't let anyone else have him. He's all hers. So he lifts her onto the bed, trailing kisses down her belly as he admires the outfit she chose just for him. He tells her he wants to take a closer look. Of course, we're left to imagine the rest. This isn't a hentai after all. The next day at work, Yui finds herself zoning out, replaying the events of the night before in her mind. While riding the elevator, she ends up alongside the same group of girls who had been gossiping about Masugu. Sure enough, they're talking about him again. But this time she takes it in stride, finding it nice to hear people praising her boyfriend. And then, as if on cue, the man himself steps into the elevator. Naturally, Yui reacts aggressively as she always does around him, which means she has no choice but to watch as the other girls start chatting him up. They ask about his days off, and he casually takes the opportunity to mention that he usually spends them hanging out with his girlfriend. The girls say they had already guessed as much. Once the elevator clears out, leaving just Yui and her friend remarks on Masugu having a girlfriend. Yui simply says that he is a good guy after all. Sometime later, summer break is approaching. Masugu's vacation starts the next day. Hayakawa, on the other hand, says she doesn't really have anything planned. Since everywhere is crowded during this season, she decided to take a longer break in the fall instead. Being single, she doesn't have to plan around anyone. Then she asks Masugu what he plans to do, leading to a flashback from a month ago. Our two main characters had been arguing over their vacation destination. They couldn't reach an agreement, making Masugu realize just how incompatible they were. Everyone at work said they were like cats and dogs. She complained that he always says the exact opposite of whatever she says. Once they had cooled down, he pointed out that their back and forth was part of the fun. In short, she wanted to go to the sea, while he preferred the mountains. Though he had to admit he was a little disappointed that if he got his way, he wouldn't get to see her in a swimsuit. She says that since this is their first trip together, she wants to do something special and make the most of it. It's their chance to go somewhere without worrying about being seen. Finally, he gives in and says he's fine with going wherever she wants. But she takes that the wrong way, saying it sounds like he's not excited about the trip at all. He reminds her that he literally just said he wants to enjoy a private hot spring with her. Of course, even though his words make her happy, she still doesn't want to give in so easily. So she suggests they try it out in the bath that day, and they do. Once she experiences it for herself, she finally gives in and agrees to go somewhere nearby, booking a room with a luxurious outdoor bath. As it turns out, the inn they choose happens to be in Masugu's hometown. Unfortunately for them, the night before their departure, Yui's department is hit with a major issue. She can't believe it. Now she has to work overtime. The problem is so serious that her coworkers are starting to panic, fearing it'll take until the next day to resolve. Yui knows that if she can't make it, he would forgive her with a smile, but she wants to go no matter what. So she tells her coworkers that she'll finish the work that night no matter what it takes. Just then, reinforcements arrive. The rest of the team that was on site. With their help, they managed to finish everything that day. Finally, Yui is able to go home and meet up with Masugu. But before we see their trip, the focus shifts back to Hayakawa. She's at her favorite cafe working while everyone else is on vacation. By now, it's practically a tradition for Some to sit with her. He had the same idea as her, to take a longer break in the fall. Now, back to our main characters. They're enjoying their trip, indulging in limited edition pastries and having a great time. In the middle of it, Yui asks if he was really okay with coming to his hometown. He assures her it's fine since he hasn't spent much time in that area anyway. Just then, a television crew approaches them, asking if they'd be willing to do a short interview. Yui immediately refuses, but Masugu points out that he's never been on camera before. The reporter explains that all they have to do is smile at the camera while holding their pastries. But Yui panics and runs away, saying that cameras are a problem for them. If people from work saw them on TV, it would be a huge issue. He says it was just for local TV though. Next, he takes her to a sunflower field, where they start taking photos and having fun. At some point, the moment turns romantic enough for them to share a kiss. Back at their inn, Yui wonders if she'll be able to wake up on time the next day. This leads Masugu to reminisce about a night during a company training camp. That night, everyone had passed out from drinking, leaving only the two of them awake. They ended up sitting under the moonlight, talking while drinking together. In his mind, he wondered why, of all people, it had to be her. Meanwhile, she told him she was glad she wasn't alone and thanked him for his help. In the end, that moment turned out to be unexpectedly comforting for him. It was then that he realized he loved her. As he shares this memory, the atmosphere between them turns romantic again, and they kiss. Apparently, it became so romantic that, the next morning, Yui couldn't stop clinging to him. She even wanted to take things further, but they were interrupted when the staff arrived with breakfast. That day, they continue enjoying their trip, visiting all sorts of places. At one of the supermarkets, they come across a grape stall. Masugu explains that his family runs a grape farm, but he didn't think they supplied to that particular store. This prompts Yui to ask why, if they've come all the way to his hometown, he isn't visiting his family. He explains that it's their busiest time of the year due to the harvest season. If he goes back now, he'll only be a nuisance. In the end, the stall didn't actually belong to his family. Yui says she loves the views in his hometown and hopes they can come back together someday to see them again. When that time comes, she'd also love to visit his family's vineyard. The next morning, they wake up naked together, so you can imagine what happened the night before. And since they wake up long before breakfast, well, they go at it again. However, before eating, Yui suggests they take one last bath together. She says that since they made the most of their vacation, she feels ready to work hard again starting the next day. She proposes that they both set goals for next year, and if they achieve them, they'll return to that inn as a reward. Her goal is to create another sweet to market, while his is to earn a higher qualification. After all, he's still at bookkeeping level 2. To make things interesting, she adds that whoever fails their goal has to pay for their room next time. Back at the office, one of Masugu's co-workers brings souvenirs for everyone, including Yui. Now, Masugu had told his team he was visiting his hometown for vacation. So when this co-worker receives some sweets from Yui in return, she immediately recognizes them as a specialty from his hometown. Masugu is speechless. Fortunately, his co-workers assume it's just a coincidence that they both went to the same place. However, Yui also told the co-worker about all the places she visited, prompting her to ask Masugu if he's been to any of them. Thinking quickly, he replies that those places are pretty far from his house. Apparently, they don't get suspicious, and instead, they all get back to work with renewed energy.